I've got a little one coming in and out, so that's why.
Okay, just keep it on. You can just keep it on mute.
Oh, okay.
Unless you have a question. Okay, so we will begin deliberations for all of the cases. We will go in order of the cases, of course, starting with case number 1. I just want to give you guys a reminder. You heard some significant testimony tonight, or heard some public comments tonight. I guess it wasn't testimony, I read it in. I need to remind you, zoning is about the use of land, not people. There were a number of cases that people had written in, and they talked about the people that had written in, but at the end of the day, this is about the use of land. So we need to make sure we're focused on the area variance standards as outlined in the staff report, and we'll go through each case that way as we do. So case number 1 is 336 Nunde Boulevard. This is the addition to the single-family dwelling.
Jim, what were your initial thoughts on this case?
There's very little opposition. The opposition, the way I looked at it, the letter writer thought that the existing northwest corner of the house was going to expand to the north. I think that's really what her concern was. And the bottom line is that the house is going to become U-shaped. It's not expanding more than it is right now. And I see no problem with it.
Lashana? Lashana, you had any comments for this one? Case 1?
I actually thought, to be honest, I thought he did a nice job on the proposed expansion.
David, what about you? David, any thoughts on case 1?
Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you now.
No, I thought it was, I like the design and I think you need expansion. I'm for all for it. I have nothing against it.
Lorene?
No comment.
And Cora?
I'm off this one.
She's recused on this one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so just going through the standards, does the applicant have any alternatives? In looking at the map, looking at the site, he's got the rear of the garage goes out. So his proposal includes matching the 16-foot setback. So in terms of alternatives, he's at approximately about a 24-foot setback. And because the code requires a 20-foot setback, I want to make sure we have, covered all of our alternatives. He would really only be able to get in the rear about 4 feet. So I don't know how much of an addition that is, but I just want to point that out. The proposal is to match that existing.
Well, you know what I always say when it comes to this specific standard. Is there any other? Oh, you're at the benefits. I'll wait. Okay, sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm kind of jumping all over the place. So the benefit to the applicant. So what potential detriments to the neighborhood? So you did get some public testimony from a resident on Morven Road. The proposed addition of the rear home will further encroach upon the yard space and aesthetics of the homes. So she mentions the west side of the property. The west side of the property is not under consideration. That area is already built. It's already there. Talks about the certified wildlife habitat. So that must be on some of the other private parcels that exist.
And I think just the benefits, the applicant can utilize the property and get the most means out of the property. And I don't think those detriments will have any negative impact to the health, safety, and welfare. I think they'll have positive impacts with someone continuing to take care of this property for the time period. And I think it doesn't make any significant, and it doesn't change any of the character. I would say a lot of those homes in the around Hillside and that entire area are significant in size. This one is actually, I think personally, it's one of the smaller homes. and as a ranch for a lot of the homes in that neighborhood, especially once you get around Hillside and along the street.
Okay. Also, I think the location, he talked a little bit about the floor plan. So that's another thing to consider. Where someone poses the addition is, of course, dependent a little bit on the floor plan. The floor plan's included in the staff report. It dictates a little bit of it as well. Character of the area appears to be matching the existing built form. No other remedy. Lashana, you were going to say something about the alternatives.
I was just gonna say that of course there's another option.
What do you think that might entail?
I'm sorry?
What do you think that might entail?
No addition.
Well, so keep in mind the question is not that you don't do an addition, you're doing an addition that meets the code.
Okay, thank you, honey. Okay, thank you.
I mean, the applicant, I think the applicant could add another story potentially to the home. I think that would be a significant cost.
Specific to the rear yard setback though. So the argument would be, that he has no other remedy to meet the rear yard setback.
So does it have to be that argument? Because I think that when you're talking about additions to properties, just because he decided to put the renovation in that specific location doesn't mean that that's the only other option.
Right, so, but it's based on his proposal. So in putting it there with regard to the rear yard setback, because he's already so close to the lot line to match the other, that he doesn't have that other option. Is the requested variance substantial?
No.
No.
Construction
No.
to a single family dwelling? Any potential adverse impacts on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood?
Absolutely.
Can you say more about that, Jim?
No, the only issue that was brought up, of course, would be the so-called paths in the back of the house for wildlife. There's no trees being knocked down. There's nothing coming down, and it's not encroaching on the backyard line anyway. So I just don't see any.
Okay. All right. And then is the alleged difficulty self-created? Of course, if the difficulty is self-created, you can, the benefit can outweigh that. Are there other thoughts or comments on this proposal? Do you feel that the applicant has met the standards to be able to proceed?
I do, and I'd make a motion to grant.
Okay, let me do this like I did the previous. Okay, so there's a motion. Is there a second?
There's a second.
Okay, a motion and a second. I'm just gonna poll everyone like I did for the site visits. Jim?
Grant.
Lashana?
Yes.
Tyrese?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Lorraine?
What'd you say?
We have a motion on the table to approve? Yes? And Cora?
Abstain.
Nothing.
My apologies. I already said that and I already forgot. This motion passes.
That was like 4 hours ago, Cora.
This motion passes 5-0 with 1 abstention. Okay, case number 2 is 103 Prospect Street. This is the mixed-use building on the corner that has the reduction in transparency, but in the same window openings.
Yeah, that's a toughie. I actually thought they were coverings and that was an existing window. That was weird how they purchased it and It's like that.
It's like an opaque.
I
inlet.
actually think it doesn't look great. I disagree with her wholeheartedly. I think it doesn't look great, but I understand what she's trying to do. And it was tough to pull out a testimony, rethinking about the floor plan. It was, that was very challenging after when I asked her the question, because there's obvious different ways they could have done the floor plan or layouts. I mean, that's obvious. They could have done the layout differently where the register wasn't there. And just done different designs. I mean, with me just looking at it, I could have thought of 3 different ways they could have did it. So this one's a tough one, because you have someone who's trying to open up a business and do a really good job, and I want them to be successful. And I know there's maybe some safety concerns. I'm sorry, Corey.
No, I was just gonna say, can we make suggestions or offer some guidance to kind of replace what we have going on? Because I agree, it sounds like she just maybe isn't sure where to start, but I don't.
And she was pretty adamant that these are $10,000 windows. Like, what's it gonna do with my money? So I get that. I get it.
Could I make a statement on that?
Yeah.
He specializes in this, and now he's not here tonight. Can we hold it over and because that's what he does. Get some professional opinions from him. Do you think that'll be out of the question?
What are you looking to get out of that, though? Because remember our applicants.
As far as the metal part, is there a design or something that we could do to enhance it? Take away the transparency. I know I had Joe many years ago. He told me this is what he does. He specializes in, and maybe we should get another opinion because this is what he do. I don't know.
Or what about, we mentioned in one of the other cases, are there any energy efficiency grants, small business grants that she might be able to utilize to offset some of that cost?
Well, I think her argument is that she set it up this way. She was pretty clear about her floor plan with the register, and this is the way she wants it. So we don't want to get into the business of redesigning. We want to focus on what the applicant presented.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to pull out of her with my questioning. And the challenge, I think, with those windows is that's why I thought it was a solid window, and they put that it's going to be very difficult because those are how she purchased the windows. So unless she replaces the window, I mean, you're not getting any transparency.
Correct. It's one unit. It's like a
one
tin.
unit.
Yeah.
Because if you pull that tin off, she's telling me there's no window behind it.
There's nothing.
No, correct. It's blocking it out without actually having to close. David said in the beginning during the pre-meeting, the window openings have stayed the same. So she didn't close in the windows. It's just in lieu of putting the transparency, the glass there, it's like I don't want to say corrugated, but like this rough tin in lieu of putting or attempting to put
it just sucks because she could have purchased windows and then put some type of transparency on the windows. And that's why I was trying to bring up, because I know with us at Wegmans, we go through every town and they're like, you gotta have transparency. And we've done murals on the windows, because some of our windows aren't transparent, as you all probably know in the city, from dealing with East Avenue. So it's just, this is challenging because you're dealing with a window that's existing there, and it's a significant cost on a small business owner. So I don't know with this one. I mean, it does not look good personally. I don't think it looks good, but I understand the safety needs, and I understand she wasn't willing to budge on that floor plan at all.
Are you more concerned about that one big one or the one that's sort of around the corner from the door? I mean, you can always grant lesser relief. Yeah.
Because the prospect elevation is, I think, the one you're talking about, right?
Both of them I don't love, but I think, Johanna, I could live with the Adams Street one, but that prospect one is, they both aren't desirable at all. But I think you could kind of live with the one on Adams, but prospect, I mean, it's tough. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, does the city have any suggestions or?
Well, as Johanna said, you can approve lesser relief. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about creating uniformity in the windows. So if one elevation appears to be more appropriate aesthetically, but again, that goes back to, she did that because that's where the register is. She based it off the floor plan.
And my last concern is, I mean, she said these windows cost $10,000. I don't know if she can even afford to do anything else. I mean, this may cause her not to open. This may, I don't want to put anybody, especially someone who's trying to revitalize such a tough corner in a challenging neighborhood, so that's where my thought process is. So I guess I don't know. I really don't know. Does anybody else have any suggestions or?
You should
Well,
throw
David,
a mural on it, a flower or something.
I mean, but the issue
I
doesn't
agree with
get.
you.
I was trying to suggest to her you can sort of see through it with some type of mural, some type of transparency. But
Well, we don't regulate art, so if she wants to put a
no,
mural
I
on it,
understand
then-
that. The issue wasn't really art. I personally thought the tins came off. That's why I even said
I
it.
understand. Yeah,
I thought the tins came off.
makes sense.
Well, when David first brought it up, and then you jumped on it also, Tyrese, I kept thinking that big black bottom part is really ugly. And if there's some kind of a little design painted on there or something cute or something like that, it looks so much better.
I mean, I can always write into a notice of decision if that's the direction you're going, that you'd like her to explore the options of doing some sort of art or mural or something on that, just as a talking point.
Yeah.
Be fine with me. I don't want her to have to spend money to pull that thing out.
I know that's the thing. I would love for them to be, and I really don't mind the tint. I think the tint would have looked really good on there, but it goes back to her floor. The tint, which is on the top half of the window and on the windows that are on Adams Street. I don't think, the tint isn't bad. It's a lot better than a lot of convenience stores, corner type stores are doing. I think the tint windows look really good. And I think that, helps a lot, so.
Let me ask this question. So the standard is, will the proposal create an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood? Is what got done producing a change to the existing character? Has it gotten better?
I don't think it does.
Well, it was better than what it was.
Is that in reference to, question, is that in reference to, because I look at the picture on in the staff report from when it was Sweetie's Groceries, and that looks slick. That looks good.
You're talking about the
plexiglass.
previous conditions?
Right, that's the plexiglass you can just push right through.
That's what she
Went
said. She
straight
said that
through
was
it.
plexiglass that went right through it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just from a visual standpoint, right there on this first page, that's like, wow. And that's what I thought, I don't know.
It's hard. I get it. So the work
This
is
one
done.
is a hard one.
The work is done. Let me ask you this. What, in the interest of, the applicant, what sort of things other than art that we've talked about, what other things would you have liked her to see other than just replacing the windows as they are? Are there other,
This.
what's that?
I think asking to replace the windows is asking too much. She's going in. What about planters or something in?
I was thinking of planters, or what about an awning that kind of created the,
Yeah, something to give it
But
a little.
do you think the awning is gonna cover the tinted window that you can see through? Then it's really gonna be.
Yeah, that really.
You really can't see
that-
it.
So there's
But
certainly
it'll
a
add
benefit.
color. You know what I'm saying? It'll add
Oh,
more character
dimensions?
to it.
yeah.
Well, there's certainly a benefit in what she did. I think that they can be popped out. She didn't fill it in. It's one unit. The tin comes out.
The tin may come out.
I mean, yeah, David, they could do something where they keep the top half. I don't know, I don't know. I'll probably, I don't know. I'll be, this is really a tough one.
On the side, I'm okay with. I can live with the
Street,
side.
I'm
On
fine.
Adams Street, I
Adams
can live
Street
with
is
that.
fine. I mean,
You're
I
fine
can
with
live
the
with
Adams Street?
I don't
Yeah.
love it, but I can live with it, I guess. I
Yeah.
mean,
But this is a little too much.
yeah, Prospect is.
It's a little too much.
So
It kind of looks like it looks like kind of like a prison. I don't know. I just.
So you can approve with lesser relief. So if you want some sort of, if you would like to do a mirror image to reflect the Prospect elevation, I'm sorry, the Adams Street elevation,
So
It
Adams
looks-
is good. It's the
Right, so
prospect.
you can, she needs to match the Prospect Street with the Adams Street. Is
Yeah,
that what
then
I'm
you gotta,
hearing?
oh, you still may have to pull it out.
Yeah, you're gonna have to pull it out no
You
matter
gotta
what.
pull it
Yeah, no
out.
matter what, right.
I mean, if that's the case, I would just want her to do a tenant window, and she'll honestly just have to figure out her floor plan, because personally, she can redo a floor plan. I'm sorry, it's floor plans. It's so many different options that you can try to configure. I mean, part of the question is, I could play around with her floor plan and do something differently where it's really inviting. I mean, you potentially could have, different products like fresh fruits and veggies, in that front window area, I just think there's other options, where you could have the register, in the middle of the space. I just think there's some cool creative things she can do. I just think they're looking in a box, and I understand that a lot of applicants may not have that creativity or the ability to really, really think and look at space differently, because it's something they don't do every day.
Or have someone help them with the design.
Exactly.
Because-
That's
yeah.
what you got to do. You
Okay.
gotta-
So it's sounding like folks it's a denial, or is
Is
that?
this holding up her
No,
project?
no.
Is this holding up her project? Is she able to open, or is she on target to open? Does she have a date? Do we
I
know?
don't have that. I'm not sure.
Because I would hate that too, for this to hold her up from.
Hold up, we deny this another year.
Well, so she has to meet the standards, and
I look at the new windows on the Adams Street side. It looks like a regular window. It's blocked out on the top and blocked out bigger on the bottom, and it has some cohesiveness to it. But when you look at the window on Prospect, excuse me, but it looks like two barn doors that don't reach down to the ground. This just doesn't look right. I'd be happy if the bottom part of that was hidden somehow or broken up somehow.
so what about an approval with lesser relief that there's some increased transparency on the Prospect Street side?
I would love to have lesser relief.
Yeah,
So
I can agree with that one.
So you're talking about increasing the transparency on the Prospect Street elevation on the bottom 75% that's blocked in.
I would say I would be okay if she would match the Adams Street side.
Okay, so what if we say we can pose this to her, and we can do it, you could do it as to be approved by the manager of zoning. So she needs to increase the transparency on the Prospect Street side back to what it was fully, or get it to mirror the Adams Street side.
Yes, great. And can you just communicate just to Jill and those guys that we really want to make sure we hold this one and make sure we get this one right, because it's important, and I want her to do well. And hopefully whoever she got the window, hopefully the manufacturer or the business will, she can really talk to them and maybe get a deal where she doesn't have to pay them or return them or do something. I know there's some ability where she possibly could do that.
Okay, so it's what we have here then is an approval with lesser relief that she either replace the tin paneling on the Prospect Street side to full window, or mirror the Prospect Street elevation with the Adams Street elevation.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm comfortable with making a motion for that, for the lesser relief.
Okay, is there a second?
A second.
Jim,
Grant,
Lashana,
Grant,
Tyrese,
Aye.
David,
Grant.
Lorene,
no,
and Cora.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-1. Next case is 153 Windermere Road.
Great job, Matt. On behalf of all of us, we really want to thank you for what you did with case number 3. They love you over there, man, in Browncroft.
They may
yeah,
not
the
like the decision.
The applicants, yes. So sometimes people have nice things to say about our
Hey,
office.
quick question about what the applicant said in his testimony. Do they have to keep the sign up until 5? Because he said he took it down at 5. Do they have to keep it up to the hearing until or until 5 o'clock when comments come in? That I didn't know what I didn't stop them and get into.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd have to read the specific code language. I think it's right up until the day of the hearing.
Okay, damn. Okay, so he should have had it.
I do believe it's the day of the hearing, but I can clarify that for.
Okay, I just want to, because a lot of applicants say stuff, I think, on the record that just isn't accurate. So
Yeah, and keep in mind that not having the sign up even at all doesn't negate the fact that it can be viewed by you guys.
Right.
But yeah, it's a good question. Point taken. So, so this property, looking to legalize the starting of changing of the exterior building material in a national and state historic district for a designated building of historic value. What we can do is there's a lot of public comments, a lot of substantive public comments, so we'll definitely go through all that to make sure we address everything. But we can certainly open it up first for you guys to chat.
Matt, number one, I would like to say, the Historical Society, what will they have to do? Hello, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, what would they have to do to meet the standards so they won't lose the status of material that they can use? What can they do?
They wouldn't be able to do the proposal. You can't put vinyl siding up. So vinyl siding is not a period. Vinyl in and of itself being a manufactured product is not a period material for a national and state historic district. So, and we can talk about these districts too, because we have it for the case number 10, but these districts are formed, as some of the folks said, they're formed when there's this, people go out, they survey the land, they fundraise, and then people have to sign off on it. And so what happens is it's determined that if these districts are, mostly intact, that there's something worth saving. So I need to point out that while the write-up for the particular property, which is in your staff report, does not address the exterior building material, the code does, and the code is what you're reviewing. So our zoning code has determined that the exterior building material, among other things with a DBHV, is important in and of itself. So keep in mind there's a lot of practical implications with an exterior building material as it relates to a DBHV. So DBHVs in and of themselves being historic structures and maintaining them, if you wrap over what the original building material is, you run the risk of hiding moisture, hiding leaks that you would never see, which could further deteriorate a structure. And because it is a historic structure, that's the point of, we don't want to do that. So if you have a roof jamming, in the winter, you're going to see that coming through. The paint is going to sort of run. So there are some implications with that. There's other implications in terms of, David, you mentioned the Historical Society. So there's, of course, the nonprofit, the Landmark Society of Western New York. They're not involved in this. It was mentioned during the hearing. We don't have any public comment or any public stance from them. But they obviously work with historic properties. So the charge here tonight is to go through all the standards and make sure that there is no detriment to the greater neighborhood or the district, or to properly make sure that alternatives have been addressed other than just what was proposed. So maybe that's what we can do as a starting point, is start with number one to say, you can pull the standards up. So the benefit to the applicant, and the benefits to the applicant, were discussed a little bit. Obviously, it allows them, it's what they want to do. It allows them to stay in their home. I think they talked about aging in place. But does doing so pose detriments to the rest of the neighborhood is the question.
I have a quick question. In terms of like the historic portion of this, is the idea that as things deteriorate, they're replaced with the same materials?
Yeah, correct. So that's a great question. So again, we're talking about the building, and the code states that the exterior cladding needs to remain the same. So if someone comes in and says, hey, I have these cedar shakes, or I have this wood clapboard, or I have whatever your building material is, you're supposed to repair it. That's the ultimate goal. With the understanding that there's obviously going to be some deterioration over the years, maybe not. But if there is, we always encourage people, and this comes up a lot with our preservation board, you need to explore alternatives to that. Maybe I think some of the public comments discuss some wood alternatives for repair.
And that's what I was gonna ask. So in terms of the alternative, is there something closer to the visual or to the original material that would be more in line with?
I would imagine there is. That would be on the applicant to bring that though. So the no other remedy question, can the benefits sought by the applicant be achieved by a feasible alternative to the variance? That question becomes, what alternatives other than vinyl did they bring? Somewhere in between the vinyl and the original building material.
No.
No to what?
And can they get recommendations from the Historical Society, what they would accept?
Yeah, I mean, they could certainly reach out to, the Landmark Society to find out what other materials are appropriate for repair.
Because I know it's very expensive. And, he's retired and, he's living on a fixed income.
Right.
The other thing they didn't provide testimony on is whether there was simply a repair of the damaged area and maybe some other areas of the house was an alternative. They're going to be re-siding the entire house, but was there an alternative of repairing the shingles in the damaged area and maybe some other areas of the house? So that's something else that
He mentioned that
there really
briefly.
wasn't any information about.
Well, he mentioned that kind of briefly in his testimony. He did put a cost to that and said that it was a cost associated with that.
Yes, a very
Yeah,
big
but what
cost.
cost compared to the cost of re-siding the whole building?
Right. He didn't.
Yes.
He didn't tell us how much the siding would cost, which obviously would be more. I think part of his testimony was, I'm paying $10,000 to repair now, and then we put all these repairs in the past few years to repaint it. I know he wrote that in part of his write-up in the staff report, and that he would continue to have to do that, so the cost would continue to incur on them. So with this, I think he's hoping to solve this problem with the vinyl siding. My other question is, there is quite a few homes in this neighborhood, the streets that I was driving up, that did have vinyl siding as well. I mean, it definitely wasn't, I would definitely say it was a good chunk of homes. I think someone provided a percentage, one of the opposing, of who had vinyl siding, how many still had the original material, how many had some new types. But, when it goes to, I think the character of the neighborhood, I understand that it's registered under this national register, but I think that there's a significant amount of homes on this street and throughout the neighborhood with vinyl siding, where I think the type of vinyl that I saw, because there are different types of vinyl, the vinyl that I saw that was already on the home, I think it really connected well with the neighborhood and with the community and with what other people had on their homes as well, where he wasn't doing siding that I think was cheaper, because there are different levels of siding that looks, really expensive and looks, really authentic on a home. And I think that what they're doing, what I saw visually, because they already sided some of the home, really, didn't have a real impact on that character of the area, besides it being, a registry, as a historic value. So.
Right. So keep in mind, when you say that it doesn't have any change, the code says it's not allowed. So inherently it does change.
Right. Yeah. I know that. Yeah.
Just as a point of reference. You mentioned different, so actually a lot of this conversation has come down to alternate building materials. So I guess what other alternate building materials were provided as part of testimony?
Or what material will be accepted by the Historical Society?
Right. What recommendations have been received or something to that effect? Or what were received and what were explored? I'm looking over. Jim, did you have any thoughts you wanted to add?
I thought we were going to go through the standards one at a time, but
oh yeah, we're gonna.
This is vast. Obviously, the people, they screwed up. You'd think that people that have been involved in the neighborhood and been involved with the Landmark Society and members of such and such would know that you can't just do certain things, especially in that neighborhood. That was really a surprise, really a surprise to me. So I'm going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And right now I'm at about 52% of agreeing with the process. That's how close it is for me. The points that were brought up by the opposition are valid, and they really are.
Yeah, they really are. Yep.
I mean, look at this very first standard up here. The first one you mentioned was benefits. No evidence of health, safety, or welfare to the neighborhood. Well, health and safety, no, but welfare. A couple of people in opposition said that the value of the houses are going to be lowered if they're sided as compared to the original clapboard or cedar shake. On the other hand, we do know from testimony both ways today, the houses sell there almost immediately. You're going to go out and you're going to buy a house and you have a certain amount of money in that neighborhood. And let's just say that what the opposition said is true. If the house is worth $130,000 and it's sided sells for 122 as compared to 130, does that hurt the other people that are living in the neighborhood? I really don't think it does, because if I bought the house for 122, the first thing I'm gonna look at is, first off, these side of the houses out here are actually pretty good looking, like Tyrese was saying. They're really not that bad. And if I'm looking to buy a house, I say, wow, look at the money that I'd save if I didn't have to go out and paint. Oh, by the way, my house right here where I'm sitting right now, 110 years old. Do you know how many days I spent in the last month scraping my cladding and trying to repaint? It's not fun. Wood's all curled up and things like that. So I'm agreeing with both sides. I'm just barely ahead of the applicant, barely.
Bringing the conversation back to the structure, what about potential, are there potential detriments to property owners that have bought in the district with the understanding that it's going to be maintained as a historic district, as opposed to an area of the city or an area of another municipality where such thing is not regulated? Well,
you bring up a good point. On the other hand, a lot of those houses in that area, forget about how old they are, but even the older ones, a bunch of them have been sided. You're not seeing people move out of the neighborhood.
So there was an analysis done that the percentage of the majority of the pretty in-depth analysis with some substance, that the predominance of the vinyl siding are post 1930 homes. So the homes that you see with attached garages, things that came after the fact. So those homes that you're comparing this one to, it states that they're non-contributing buildings. So the building that's under review is a contributing building. So there's a differentiation between, it's like whenever the code changes, there's always code changes, and people want to constantly say, well, that's what used to be done. But keep in mind, the code has changed to try to turn the tide on something. So if buildings already had it, they're non-contributing buildings. So the more non-contributing buildings you add to the district, it's that slow.
Yes, that slippery slope.
Right, where's the line?
Mm-hmm.
So we talked a little bit about, we know the benefits to the applicant, but it sounds like there are, some detriments to, Jim, I think you said the welfare. We talked a little bit about this essential character of the area. And because we heard about it in a number of the emails, I think it's important to note the proposal producing an undesirable change. David, you just used the words slippery slope. So does the question then becomes, will the proposal produce an undesirable change? And remember, we're focusing on the building. We're focusing on that character. None of the finances involved, none of that other stuff.
Were you going to speak, David?
No. Matt just cleared me.
So we can let's jump to the next one. No other remedy. Can the benefit sought by the applicant be achieved by a feasible alternative to the variance? Was the applicant able to provide other building materials as an example to say, I explored this, I explored that?
I don't recall that in testimony.
No,
that's why I asked too. I want to make sure we're focusing on the building and not sort of personalities. It's important to remember that zoning is about the use of land, and keep in mind, variances stay with the property. Yes. So someone gets a variance at a hearing and the property sells, that variance stays with the land.
Mhm.
Is the requested variance substantial?
It is actually a significant if we're talking about it possibly changing, you know, what the status of, you know, their historic, you know, how
Designation?
all of that's determined. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. You've touched a little bit upon this. So we've got physical and environmental conditions. So physical conditions, would the physical conditions be changing?
Yes. Yes, it'll be changing.
Okay, and then not self-created.
Is it up to the owner, the homeowner, if he wants the property in historical society or not?
Say that again, David?
Is it up to the homeowner if he wants the property in a historical society or not?
No, if you buy a house and you're in it or you sign on to it, you're
You
part
have
of
to-
it.
Okay. So he had to go by the standards. He knew,
Yeah, I
what he,
think,
he
I
knew
think
what he
going
bought.
back
He
to-
knew what he bought.
I think going back to Jim's point that Jim made, at the beginning, where, you can see it and you know it's going to look good, but going back to, you got folks who said on the record they've been involved with this process and they made just a big screw up like this.
Yeah.
It's a whammy on them, and it can't be about feelings or when people sent in application or when people sent in public comment, which is tough, because I definitely want to see these folks get this done and not have that on their home for months and months and months. And I do think that the vinyl is easier to take care of, but people, homeowners have to be willing. And I think this is a very I would say I think this is a very elite and educated community where you just would think they would know a little, you think they would know, because they seem to know a lot of other things. I think we've seen it with a lot of cases that have
Well, he's part of the system. He's in the Landmark Society.
Yeah,
He knows.
We maybe just ask them to come back with.
Oh yeah, I don't want to deny them at all.
I don't want to deny it. No.
So what that would look like, they would need to bring back, well, let me ask you what would that look like? That's the better question.
Some other materials or like David said, talk to the historical society and see what they may suggest or what might be more in line with preserving that.
I would even go as far as saying, something that they would actually support that would maintain their status on the actual registry. So, that the historic society, given that recommendation saying,
I would explore for them to look at some other material. I think, with the foam already being on the home, I do think there is some opportunity for them to explore with comfort some other material that may be acceptable under the registry that could go up, that could already go over the foam that's there on the home. I mean, obviously they would have to remove part of the siding that's there.
I don't know. I think the foam rides along with the vinyl. If they're exploring some alternative to the cedar shake, I think he said, which was the original siding that's underneath, and he clarified on the record it's still there. The foam board rides along with the vinyl. If someone's repairing a cedar shake home with an alternative, it's going to be on the existing cladding. The foam board is directly related to the vinyl. So if someone comes in with a different material, the vinyl rides along with that, would be my assumption.
Well, let's see what I would recommend that they go to a historical society to get their recommendation, because there may be something out there they're missing. That the historical society may accept.
Okay, so what what I'm
I
hearing,
don't,
so
I don't
you're,
want it, I don't think it's, I just want to clarify, because I don't think it's like the Historical Society has anything to do with it. I just think
they
they're,
don't,
yeah,
they
it's
don't.
just,
So
it's
the
just-
Landmark Society is
it's-
yeah,
or the Landmark Society. It's just six neighbors who have brought the opposition in full force and have provide adequate opposition that is tough to deny. So I think them going to the Landmark Society, my thing is, I don't know how that would change us. I don't know how that would change our responses to the standards. Any, a recommendation, from the Landmark Society, because you're still going to have individuals who have given this testimony, this opposition testimony, that could, if the Landmark Society or anybody says vinyl's fine, I mean, that still doesn't change, a lot of these things we just went through in the standards.
Right.
So I don't know if that's not going to be helpful for them at all. I don't know.
That's true.
I don't know what they're going to do, to be honest with you. I don't know. They're up the creek with no paddle, as my mama would say. So, this is a tough one here. I don't want to deny them though, because that.
yeah. So Tyrese brings up a good point. The Landmark Society does not have a connection to the
Our Historical Society.
what historical society?
I thought it was involved with the Historical Society.
They mentioned that they're members of the Landmark Society.
They are
which is
members of the Landmark Society.
correct,
No.
but they don't have any. I'm sorry, Johanna, go ahead.
Well, it's just, the Landmark Society won't approve it but they may have information about alternative materials.
yeah,
And that would be the only thing that might be helpful.
That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Other folks?
So do you want to adjourn this to the June meeting? Is that where we are?
Please.
Well, it sounds like looks like we're talking about a whole.
I
We just
promised
dig it
you
up.
only 7 cases, guys, but well,
Let's keep
Yep.
moving. So what we're hearing is an adjournment to the June 18th.
Yeah,
Yes.
let's hold this one.
So I need to formulate a letter to the applicant. I'm sorry, go ahead, Lashana.
No, I just heard Johanna talking about the caseload for June. And if we're doing Zoom calls, 11 cases on a Zoom call, or 10 cases on a Zoom call, is that we're talking for June now?
no, wait, we're
No,
gonna
no.
have 7. Well, this will make 8, right? Is that right, Matt?
Yeah, I don't have the number in front of me. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
it's not 10, but and the other option is to make a determination, because remember, if you make a decision tonight and they come back with an alternative, they can always come back and request a rehearing if it doesn't meet the code. Or best case scenario, if they have to repair it, but there's places that need to be repaired, they can bring forward to our office for review if there's some sort of composite material or wood material, or I'm not using the language correctly. that I
They've
read
put
in-
2,000 nails in that.
Yeah, you got nails all over the holes all
You
over
got
that thing.
nails all over. This is not good at all.
There's no sense in taking it down because, like you're saying, Matt, Tyrese,
There's no sense to take it down. It's gonna be
Right.
a mess.
it's gonna be a mess now.
So it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon for people to remove aluminum and vinyl siding. I actually got off the phone with a neighbor, a resident off of, I think they were on Culver recently, and they're in the process of removing it. So
I've done that before in one of my houses and take it back to natural wood, and I caught holy on filling in those holes.
Yeah, and I think
You
I
have
think
a
to
ton of
David's
holes,
point,
man.
You have it's just tough. You're trying to do the right thing for an individual who just retired, like David said, on fixed income. All right. So we want to hold this, or we want to vote on it?
you got to focus on the building.
I should do a straw poll.
Let's do a straw poll, because I'm going to call out your name and you say where you're at and do a straw poll. Because remember, there's only 6 here tonight, so we also run the risk of a default denial. So I want to make sure we're
I don't want that.
correct. So let's do a straw poll. Jim?
After going through all the standards like you were before, I've reversed. I'm against this right now. Not by much, but I'm slightly against it right now.
Okay. Tyrese?
If we were voting, I would vote to grant it.
Cora,
I'm with Jim.
Lashana,
I'm also with Jim.
David,
I would have granted. Yes.
you guess or you'd grant it?
No, I would have granted. Yes.
Granted, and see who sues them, David.
Yeah. Because you know he's gone
Johanna
too
will be
far.
busy at work.
Well, let's keep moving. Let's keep moving ahead. So we've got a bunch of other cases to review tonight. So based on, who did I miss here?
Lorraine,
We're missing Lorraine. She dropped off a little bit and I'm watching and she's not back.
Okay, so that would leave a default denial without that other vote. So
I'll change mine to hold it.
I agree.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'll hold it.
I agree.
I'm with that. I'll go with that.
We need more information. It's simple as that. What kind of material can go up there rather than what's down there right now? And I know what you said, Matt, about if you left the not the siding, but the
foam board, he said?
and you put something else on top, as a board, we still might think that might be okay. As a board, we might.
So you're looking for alternatives to the proposal tonight in between what was there and in between and what was proposed,
I am.
and what that would look like. Is everyone in agreement with that hold?
And
I agree with that.
In addition to showing why those other materials wouldn't be feasible as well, and why this obviously is the only alternative. I think they just need to hone into that. I think he got distracted by all the opposition. He got all.
Well, keep in mind, applicants are always told to bring alternatives, something in between. Okay, so someone gonna make a motion to hold?
I'll make a motion to hold.
I'll second
And
it.
second?
I'll second it.
I'm gonna poll everyone. Jim,
Yeah, hold, yes.
Tyrese,
Yes.
Cora,
Yes.
Lashana,
Hold.
and David.
Oh,
Okay. So with 5 people, that'll be held. The applicant will receive a letter outlining the need to present additional testimony showing what alternatives can be explored. 202 Otis Street. This is the conversion of non-residential to residential on the corner of Delmar.
They've got to do something with that. I was along with David's comments. I wanted them to do a bit more with that exterior. I mean,
that exterior.
With the exterior, you said?
the
Yes.
exterior in general. I can't support this application with them not doing anything to the exterior and keeping it. We've had cases come before us. I think if there was one off St. Paul last year or a year and a half, where they've made some changes to windows, to doors, there were 2 people sleeping on the stoop today when I passed by there. I can only imagine a family coming home and there's people sleeping on the stoop. I think there could have been something to really box out that front and get rid of that stoop, and to really move those doors off of Otis, that front door off of Otis, and do something on the side. I'm glad he answered my question about the right of way, and that's the city's responsibility.
That's all city land, yeah.
Yeah, and I hope the city would do something, since that's if the application is granted.
He would need to he can just reach out to the the city's Department of Environmental Services.
But yeah, those front, I don't know how anybody else feels. I want to see something done with that front stoop and those doors and those windows on Otis.
I absolutely do.
Yeah.
So
It's still like a bar.
So I'm gonna have Johanna weigh in after what I say. So there's no code requirement for him to do any of those exterior changes. What's being reviewed here is just the conversion. So my question becomes, what parameters are allowed in terms of conditions or?
Well, if you want, we can go through the standards so that, because I don't have a problem with voting on this one. because I definitely do not feel that the changes that the transition from non-residential to residential is not, I don't think it would pass the standards.
So you'd rather see a commercial business in there?
If you're saying that we have no jurisdiction on how it's going to be compatible to changing to residential, absolutely not. Because if you think about what the uses of it right now is non-residential, it's a commercial property. And it does not, if we go through the standards, I do not believe that it would pass for us to justify changing this to residential because it looks like it's commercial space.
I think you could impose some conditions if you were inclined to vote for this, and in order to mitigate
What you're
the
describing.
concerns you have, they could make some changes, including better windows, addressing that front stoop issue. You could put that as a condition of your approval.
Okay, good.
What's specific to the stoop? What are you referring to with that?
Removal of the stoop.
Remove it, like close the building in?
Yeah, I would suggest him close the building.
To eliminate it.
Yeah. I mean, that isn't difficult to do. He can align it and just make it and just square it off.
Okay.
I agree. Make it more.
Is
like-
everyone in a?
Would railings or almost making it look
building.
porch-like prevent the problem you were talking about?
I
without-
would absolutely say porch-like.
Yeah.
How do you make that? I don't think you can make that little stoop look like.
How do you make it look porch-like?
Because it's too small.
I don't
It's
know.
too small.
I mean, could you add a storm door and some,
Or close it off? Yeah, because it's right on the corner. And how many houses do we see we go and enter on a corner?
That's what I'm saying too, David. I agree with you. You don't. It's really unlikely that you see anything going into a corner. And I think you have to really think about this land and what potentially the traffic that is here on Otis and I can't think of that. I'm always
Delmar.
Delmar. I'm sorry. And additionally, you always want to see. I think even if I can take the windows as an example, but yeah,
Well, there is
those two things are it. Those are my only two comments. Obviously, I would like to see.
My answer would be no.
Yeah, I would like to see a
Straw
better
poll,
window,
I will vote against this.
a window plan, even with
Yes.
the conditions, though, LaShawna.
I mean, I guess I hear you all talking, like going through what the conditions are. So
But
I'm
you would want to
open to
see
them.
the applicant propose something.
correct. Because
Yeah.
I don't want us to say with these, conditions and they're not even open to it. It would be, you know what I'm saying? It may not behoove us to go through all these different scenarios when they're not even open to it. Because we didn't even, there was not much questioning around all of that.
Yeah, I think
That's just my thought.
I think I asked the question and he basically said, "Yeah, I agree, but I don't think the owners."
He didn't really think about it. No.
I mean, he's not the owner, so he can't make those calls, and I understand that.
Well, and he said that they're already gutting the upstairs, and he made a comment about over improving and getting the return in that area. So I mean, right? It doesn't sound like that would be in their plan if we didn't make them bring it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
What about so in terms of because it sounds like the exterior is a concern, both the stoop as well as the windows. Is that right?
And
Yeah.
the back door
That's
going,
Yeah.
the back door going into a bedroom, but I don't want to get into.
Well, that might be convenient for the person that sleeps in that bedroom. I don't know.
Well, when you're looking at a 3-bedroom, you usually don't have kids involved. That's a good point.
That's the bedroom you would have wanted growing up, David.
Yeah.
So what about this? What about, and maybe I'm wrong. What I'm hearing, I think, is the conversion to residential is problematic because the aesthetics of the building still say commercial. Is that right?
Yes.
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 Across the board. So what about so if there were proposed changes that eliminated the commercial look of the building to make it look more like all residential, predominantly residential, changed totally. And then you were okay with the residential, the concern is connecting the aesthetic to it. You have the opportunity also, we can do some approval on condition that they submit drawings to be approved by the manager of zoning to be able to change the aesthetic of it.
Could they bring it back to the board?
You could, but you'd have to hold it. So it pushes out another case.
Yeah.
And you know, just keep in mind the concern with that is people bring their A game. You know, we talk to applicants, they're told to bring everything. So if so we really try to do a good job of if they've presented this and haven't presented any alternatives and you're okay with it just needing the aesthetics, you know, we can certainly handle that. If you
Okay.
do want it to come back to the board, it would have to be, you know, it's another hold, it gets pushed out. You know, there's larger impacts with that.
Man, how would you handle it? How would you handle it?
Well, so what would need to happen is this. So we would have a conversation, well, you'd have to make the motion to approve, and we would talk about how the concern associated with, it's not the use, it's the use connected to the aesthetics of it. So they would need to submit drawings which more accurately, so when I look at this and I see that little commercial I see those windows
Yeah.
on both elevations, they have that old like bar look to them, like
Yeah.
for a long time. So they would need to submit an elevation that maybe changes out the windows to mirror the residential looking windows on the second floor.
Yeah, they definitely need some double hung windows in there for sure.
Correct, right. And so they would have to mirror that on the Otis Street elevation. They're
Yes.
already installing residential windows on the Delmar Street elevation. Remember, they talked about that when we showed the floor plan. So the last remaining piece would be reconfiguring the front stoop to eliminate that look that it's a commercial use entrance.
Yeah.
Get rid of,
That's horrible.
You know, they had already said they were going to put windows on
the Delmar side.
Delmar, but didn't provide you with any drawings of how
Any
that was
drawings
going
are-
to look.
right.
So, I mean, they really probably should have brought that at minimum, and then
Yeah.
you're asking for more and
That's why,
along
that's
the
why I
other
would
frontage.
wanna, that's why personally I would want to see it again.
Yeah.
Just so you can hold it.
All right, let's see what everybody says. Do you need,
Hold for June 18th.
Yeah,
Sure.
Can I make a motion as chair or no?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll make the motion to hold.
second?
Jim?
Oh,
Nope, Lashana. Oh,
No, I'm going to pull you out. I'm just doing it in alphabetical order.
sure.
Jim, hold. Lashana,
Hold.
Tyrese,
Oh,
David,
Oh,
here, and Cora.
Hold it.
Okay, so that'll be held, excuse me, and can be brought back to the June 18th hearing.
with drawings.
Correct, the drawings that need to reflect the proposed
Yes.
elevation on Delmar as well as
Yes.
the new
Yes.
window on
That corner.
the
in the
corner,
back.
as well as exploring the stoop.
Right.
Okay, next case is case 5. This is the Monroe Avenue and Alexander Burger King project.
so can I just say something to my fellow board members? So guys, like this case, I know like the design, in testimony, it seemed like a lot of people didn't have an issue with it. There weren't a ton of questions, but like this is like my little urban planning nerd. I think this project is so vehicle oriented. It's so bad for this corner. I think that if we have the planning manager of the city putting in a letter, I really think we need to think long and hard about what we do in this deliberations. I in no way can support this project. I think there is multiple elements where they don't meet the standards charted for us to really explore. We really have to take a look at how this property can be utilized in the future. I think that the property owner specifically, I have nothing against Burger King itself. I think the applicant was trying to make that in his testimony that people just didn't want another fast food restaurant, because I think there's other fast food restaurants you look at across the country where you've done in developments that you really can do something good with. I think if you spend the time and the money, it really comes down to those dollars in engineering and really having people think outside of the box that you hired. And I just don't think that we've seen that tonight. So I just wanted to say that about this case. I don't know how folks are feeling, but I mean, this is just such a focal point, like in the middle of our city, on Monroe and Alexander. And we have this vehicle-oriented Burger King that just is about cars, cars, cars. So sorry.
I'll agree in that, definitely in that, because when I think of that corner, I think of how dangerous even that Dunkin' Donuts is. Trying to turn in there, and the line that's always bleeding into the street and not being even sure what's the line versus what's traffic and where the line starts and getting cut off. And I imagine that the corner that Arby's is on this project is even more, because you have buses that line up over there, and it's even a faster, busier even than just kitty corner. So
Can I clarify something quickly? The applicant.
Oh, sorry, I should have said Tom worked on the site plan, and he's also my
yep,
technology
Tom.
person tonight, so it's a double whammy.
I just wanted to clarify, the applicant had stated a couple times that the fire department was in favor of this, but they were never supportive of this design. So I just wanted to clarify, they have concerns that fire trucks might not be able to make the corner if there are cars waiting to get into the drive-through. So they've always had a concern with that.
Well, there's no way a fire truck of that size, if you can get into that right end, like, there's no way a fire truck can get into that right end at all. I mean, and they didn't even show any circulation of truck movements. So that was inaccurate. Okay.
I just wanted also to say that even in their own words, they talked about in this whole pandemic and going forward era, having the option of walk up order and everything. I mean, that seems like a really good opportunity to kind of explore some new designs.
Yeah, you would think so.
And not just throw it out there, kind of in a buzz.
And say, we're gonna throw a sidewalk right over here next to this car. Like, I don't know how you get to the sidewalk, but they may put it here. Like,
I was going to start to go through the standards. Does anyone, David or Jim, want to chime in before we do that?
No.
I'm a believer in streetscapes. I realize that if this existing building goes away, it's only been closed for a few months. You had 3 portions of the four-way of the intersection had buildings on them. Now you'd only have 2. So those were my thoughts. I wasn't very happy with what I saw tonight. Sorry, David.
Oh, you speak your mind. That's why we're here.
Okay, so the benefits of the applicant outweigh detriments to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or the community by granting of the variance?
no.
Based on what you said about the
I think vehicle
walkability.
as Cora mentioned, vehicle circulation, the lack of safety for pedestrians that's being shown.
Yeah, and I just want to draw this back to the standards. So the standard for that, the 2 on Alexander are that setback. So the maximum front yard setback is 0 to 5, and they're asking for approximately 98 to 117 along Alexander, and then the other setback. So essential character of the area. So will the proposal produce an undesirable change?
I think it will.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think with all 4 of the variances, it will.
Right, so you've got the refuse in a front yard and then the setback and then convert it to parking. Can the benefits sought by the applicant be achieved by a fee? So are there alternatives in site design?
Yes.
Because these variances are all related to site design and building placement, as you have discussed. So the question relates to that. So site design changes. Okay. So is therefore the variance substantial?
Yes.
96 to 118. So refuse is in the front yard. So looking at the site plan, you're saying that there's other opportunities to explore in terms of where to place the building, where to place the vehicular circulation and things like that.
How to hide the refuse. I think there's,
Properly okay.
Absolutely.
Okay,
stone wall.
I'm sorry, say that, Terry?
Just the stone wall with the refuse, that one just was surprising that one even got through. I mean, I would have been better. That's why I was trying to figure out, because it didn't say, unless it's really small, what was the refuse in, and if it was to match what I saw, like the tan building. I mean.
Okay, and then the physical or environmental conditions, you've discussed the physical conditions, you discussed the other buildings on the corner.
And quick question, I should have asked the applicant this question. Where are the existing trees that are remaining, because it didn't really show existing trees. What are the mature trees are those the ones that are behind the drive-through lane? I didn't know where those are.
Let me check the site plan. So if you look at the landscaping plan sheet, which is like the second to the last one in your packet, where my handwriting is on the variances, it looks like the trees labeled, Tom, maybe you know the answer to this. Oh no, they don't correspond with that.
No, they don't. Not this. No, not this.
I understand what you're saying. I got
This is
you.
what I do every day. No, it doesn't at all. So I'm trying to I was like, I should have asked him. That's my fault. I should have asked him that.
Yeah, I think he said that there were 4 mature trees and 2 of them were going to remain.
Yeah, and I didn't know. I just didn't know where on the plan they were.
Okay. All right. So you're looking at this, so it's 4 separate variances, but you're all in on those variances. Is that what I'm hearing? The refuse, the setback,
Yeah, I just don't like it.
Yeah, I am. David,
someone want to make
on this one.
Someone want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to grant.
I'll second.
Jim?
Good night.
Lashana?
Sorry, that would be a no.
Tyrese?
No.
David?
Yes.
In support of the application?
Yes.
Okay. And Cora?
No.
Okay, so the motion is denied. Case number 6 is 170 Atkinson Street. It's an infill single-family dwelling. So keep in mind this request, it's a permitted use in the district. And it meets all of the other requirements in terms of the site. One thing I wanted to mention, it was touched on briefly, the variance that the applicant is seeking is regarding the design. Keep in mind our design standards are to try to keep some continuity in the neighborhood.
Yes.
This street happens to have a lot of other infill with a mix of different decades, so it becomes a little bit more challenging to meet them, even if he tried to meet every one of them, because if you do a 200-foot radius, you end up capturing sort of a house from every decade, so to speak. So I just wanted to make a note of that with regard to applying the standards for this.
I get what he was trying to do here, and I really do appreciate it.
I like the little house.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely gonna be different from the neighborhood. I know what you just said, Matt, but it's definitely gonna be
Right.
Gonna be a different one in the neighborhood. Let me tell you.
Well, there's a great demand now in a lot of development communities for a tiny house.
Right. Yeah. I think one of the things I would have loved to see is a front porch, because I think as you
Yeah.
look this neighborhood is predominantly
everyone have
African
one.
American, and I think a part of African American culture is being out on your front porch, and especially if you're looking for seniors who want to be outside. That's one thing I would have wanted to see, because they're kind of like isolated in this tiny house, and they may be out on the lawn now. That's something I would have wanted to see on here, because just with the community and who potentially would have been living in the home, I think that's it's kind of it's a part of culture. I think if you look at the National African American Museum in Washington, D.C., it actually has like a front porch on the museum, because it's so a part of the culture and community. So that's the only
Well, I can always write that into the decision that the applicant explore the possibility of doing a porch or something.
Or you can make it a condition to mitigate,
Or make it a
as a
condition.
lesser relief, and to mitigate the impact of some of the other elements that don't meet the design standards.
None of them that did. Oh, he got one. I'm sorry. It's one.
I definitely think I said this in the hearing, and he reiterated that I think there definitely is a need for a single floor house. So I love that. I agree about the porch. I think if we throw a porch on them, I'm all for it.
Others, Jim, LaShawna?
Where does that porch go? I mean, I'm looking at.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I don't.
Where
That
do you-
was gonna be my question.
And a porch, of course, has to have a roof, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I would have
So
loved
it has to be a roofed structure.
But I mean, I
Well, they
can
can
support
come and
it.
wrap around the front. You look at the drawings, and they got the existing homes. It's not that difficult to put a porch on that.
No, he could wrap it around the
Wrap it
around the
around.
side of it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of, if you look at homes in the, well, I don't want to say the South, because that's really out of the box. But yeah, I think there's ways he could wrap
Yeah,
the
you can wrap it
around.
around.
Maybe do some type of French door inside, where the French door leads inside to the porch on the side. I don't think it's gonna be tough for him to do it on the front for sure.
I was gonna say the same thing, maybe a sliding glass door or something.
Yeah, something on the side.
Well, it's a corner lot. How do you feel about something off the back? Or is the driveway right up against that? Because I'm thinking if it's in the rear of the house, it's actually still on the side and visible to the street.
Yeah, I mean, that's an option. I don't want to tell him where to put it. I mean, that'll be for him to figure out.
Okay, so
If you put that porch on the front, you gotta set the house farther back from where it is, right? I don't know if the setback is in that area.
no, if you build an open porch, it can encroach in any setback.
Oh, it can.
Open porches can encroach in any setback. They're not like a building addition. Because they're open. The porches, as Tyrese kind of talked about, they're thought to be this public-private area. It's that transition before you go from the street, like into the house where people congregate and that sort of thing.
If it did more in the rear, would it still need a roof? If it was more like a deck?
A porch has to have a roof, otherwise it's not a porch. You know what I'm noticing here on the back? So on his site plan, I believe this says patio off the rear left corner.
I saw that. It was really hard to look on here on this.
Oh, that is a patio. Yeah.
Yeah, so there is some sort of like a recreation space along the Tilden Street side. Are you still, are you thinking like you'd like the recreation space to be a porch with a roof, or is the patio?
No, I saw that in the back, and I couldn't tell if that was, I'm on page A300 of the drawings.
Yeah.
Yep, top left. That's what it looked like. I can't really see, to be honest with you, what it says.
If you go to C100, sheet C100 is the site plan. And so because it's a corner lot, it looks like there's a sort of a patio proposed off the back. And then there's that rear yard for obviously recreation space along Tilden Street, and then the driveway toward the back.
In the driveway, yes, I see it.
So it provides that space along the back to be able to, have the green space, have the backyard sort of thing.
Okay, I'm good. I see.
But Tilden is good. Like that street, they have a good view of Tilden, because they have houses on Tilden Street.
So it faces those people, yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm good. I see it. I see the patio now. Yeah, I'm sorry. I see it on C100.
And it's on the street side too, which is good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm good. I can accept the standards as proposed.
Others in the same boat?
Yep.
Yeah.
Can someone do a motion?
I'll make the motion to grant.
I'll second it.
All right, Jim,
Yes.
LaShawna,
Yes.
Tyrese,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
and Cora.
Yes.
All right, so that motion passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 0. Next case is the driveway on Gregg Street in Cornhill.
Grant.
What are you laughing at, David?
Huh?
What are you laughing
Easy.
at?
Well, it's kind of easy ones, the rest of them.
Anyone have an issue with it?
Yeah, I'll probably be. I actually don't like it, but that's fine. I think I figured everybody else, but it's fine. I just think I think it's a detriment to the community to add more. I know Jim made a good point. There was some, front yard. There were some driveways that didn't lead, but I think those homes were different because those homes had the attached garages to them. So I think it has a different character than this single family home does. So that was my only concern. But I have no, I'm not big bad, no on this one.
So, of course, not going to the rear yard obviously eliminates asphalt. So there's definitely a stormwater benefit to that.
Yep.
If you look at, it also, of course, allows you to not have a car in your backyard.
But in that curb cutout, you lose the street parking. Do we know, would that curb cutout lose 1 or 2 parking spaces? Did we get that information?
It's probably likely closer to 2 just because the way it fans out. So whenever you install it.
So, I mean, it is kind of a detriment to the community because you're gaining 1 space and you're losing 2.
Sure. But then she could actually just come in and run it to the rear yard and still eliminate those 2 off-street parking spaces with doing it without coming to the zoning board. So keep that in mind too. The alternative is just doing code compliance. She still eliminates it. Whereas doing this, she keeps some sort of environmental factors intact.
Yeah,
and then
That's what she's concerned about the neighbors.
So I'll make a motion to grant and accept the standard.
Before you do,
Yep, go ahead.
I think to me, I think you should make the motion just a little bit different, saying that you want to make sure that next year she actually paves that driveway, like she said on the write-up. It's going to be gravel the first year. Anybody pick up on that?
Was there a reason for gravel the first year? For the settlement or something?
I have a hunch. No, we didn't ask it, but I have a hunch. It has to do with the cost. She spent a chunk of money to get rid of those trees, but on page number 2, under number 6, the last 2 lines, or last 3, for the first year, follow with asphalt, concrete, and brick the following year. So she wants to apply gravel for the first year. And I want to make sure that it does become a brick type driveway, like she's asking for on number 6 on page 2.
How would we put that in there, Matt? To make sure that it's paved with asphalt next year.
Jim, where are you reading?
On page number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Page number 2, number 6, project information.
Hold on 1 second for me.
I'm reading under her benefits.
I gotcha.
It shows a graph in her benefits and shows the plan. It says driveway excavation, curb cut, and gravel installation first year.
Follow with asphalt, concrete, and brick the following year.
Yeah.
Well, your question about how do you enforce that? So you're approving her application on those words. So if you're approving it, it has to occur. There would have to be.
But she can't even really wait a year to do it.
No.
The permit is to pave, right? So we wouldn't close out the case until she's done with the whole
Gotcha.
project.
Correct. So what would happen? Yeah, just as Tom said, it would be like what they call a rollover case, and the inspector can drive by and not close it until it actually gets.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Okay. So I'll make them. Well, the motion's out there. The motion.
in the second. Okay, Jim,
Grant.
Lashana,
Grant.
Clarice,
Grant.
David,
Grant.
and Cora.
Grant.
Okay, so that motion passes 5-0. All right, 1541 South Avenue. This is the third floor living space.
I'm fine with it.
Does anyone have any questions on this? It does not increase the off-street parking requirement. It doesn't make any changes like that. As David said, the applicant will be subject, or as David had asked about before, the applicant subject to the building code for all health and safety items.
I think David should make a motion.
I'm proposing Grant.
I'll second it.
All right, Jim,
Grant.
Lashana,
Grant.
Tyrese,
Grant.
David,
Grant.
and Cora.
Grant.
191 Genesee Street.
I need to speak on this one. I need to speak on this one.
I definitely am ready to put a motion on the floor to grant, and I'm ready to vote.
Let's hear David. What do you guys say, David?
No, because we worked on a project over there for 4 years with Rochester Management. We invited him. We went to the store about 3 times to invite them to the community meetings. They never showed up. The store across the street, that's on the same side as Zion Hill, they came. And they made changes in their store as far as people hanging out, the type of product that they're pushing. But they're doing some good revitalization over there. There's just too much violence on that corner. It is just too much violence. It don't seem like the owners are trying to do anything about it. I know that's not what we're here for, but
Oh,
I have a problem.
so yeah, when the applicant met with me, I, of course, discussed with him how he needs to put windows back in. I know that was mentioned during the hearing. I said,
Yeah.
you can put windows back in and you can avoid the process. So I'm glad someone brought it up because he stated, I believe, that he's not.
No, yeah, he stayed on the record and he said,
Which is why I'm ready to vote.
and he said, and he said aesthetically, he said he doesn't think there's any issue with it. He said it looks fine.
He did. And I think we heard from,
Again, which is why I'm ready to vote.
I think we heard from, real quick, the 19th Ward Community Association, as well as the Genesee Street
Business, yeah.
Business Corridor. Yeah, the business, Genesee Street Corridor Business Association.
So can I make a motion to grant?
Are you suggesting he doesn't meet any of the standards?
No,
Not a single one.
Not one.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a motion to grant. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Jim,
Deny.
Lashana,
Deny.
Tyrese,
Denied.
David,
Nah,
and Cora.
Deny.
And the last one for this evening, case number 10, is 153, 155 Averill Avenue. This is the rear structure.
I would fix that thing up and put some more tenants back there.
Say that
oh
again.
no.
I would have fixed that thing up and put some more tenants back there.
So the, I want to touch on, so it is a designated building of historic value. So the,
So did it just get built around, Matt? Did more just houses just get built around it?
yeah, so it's interesting. And there seemed to be this, someone even mentioned it in their comments, that there was this pattern of development where these accessory structures were in the back and they were like a point in time. So having them now doesn't reflect the pattern of development. And it says in here, this is why it's listed. I want to read this. In accordance with the National Park Service for the South Wedge Historic District, this property is significant under criterion A in social history and C in architecture as distinctive and substantially intact 19th century working and middle class neighborhood. So it was thought to, or it was an intact 19th century working and middle class neighborhood representing Rochester's growth from the Erie Canal area. Close to downtown, blah, blah, blah. The neighborhood retains a significant cohesive collection of primarily vernacular architecture representing interpretations of all popular 19th century styles. So the front structure, I believe, is also listed. So they're all listed within the district. This one I think Lashana mentioned it, it's not even visible from the, or Tyrese maybe, it's not visible from the right of way, it's hidden.
No, not at all.
There was not any other information about its, just paging through the site plan review. There's no other specific information about its architectural substance.
Didn't she give some testimony also that some of the architectural detail had been removed years ago
Yeah, that
Removed
it's,
and destroyed.
or destroyed? Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
when they went and did the asbestos.
And when they did the asbestos.
But I think that was her, but I think even before then, I
Before
thought she
then.
said,
That it was vacant because she had
Yeah.
planned to use it, but she never ended
Never
up
used
using it. There are photographs of the existing condition in the staff report, which shows some of that deterioration we're talking about. You know, in terms of, obviously, DBHVs are important for a reason. This one, you know, in terms of the character of the area, she did get 2 letters of support, and that's all I received for the application. So, and you guys went out to the site, so you can't really see it from the front, right?
Correct.
Nope.
It's completely hidden from view. It's not part of the public
It's
streetscape.
completely hidden. You may be able to
Right.
you may be able to see it in the wintertime when there's nothing but leaves were blooming, so you couldn't see anything.
And the standards that the applicant submitted as part of the application. Does anyone have any comments or concerns with those?
Mhm.
No, I'm good. Why are you snoring?
So the survey map, I just want to note this too. The survey map shows that the property is almost about a little over 150 feet deep, and this structure is all the way at the rear, it looks like. Yeah, because she said there was no driveway, so you can't see down between it. Okay. And I'm talking about that for the standard. So the benefit to the applicant, is there any potential detriment to the welfare of the neighborhood with the removal of it?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, so character of the area. So in terms of like a public streetscape standpoint and whether or not it's visible, you're saying that it's not visible.
No.
All right, anything else to add on this?
Nope.
Yeah, it's a piece of cake.
I want to,
Wait another year, it's gonna fall down by itself.
I'll make
someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to grant.
I'll second.
All right, Jim,
Grant.
I know you already answered that. Lashana,
Grant.
Tyrese,
Grant.
David,
Grant.
and Cora.
Grant.
That motion passes 5-0-0. Okay, that concludes all of the deliberations for the May 21st, 2020 zoning board hearing. The next hearing is June 18th,
Are
2020.
you gonna have lunch next time, Matt?
Delivered?
Yes.
I'm sorry, the answer to that question is no.
Hey, you guys have a good Memorial Day. Weekend.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Y'all have a good
everything.
night.
And you do the
Have a
same
good
thing.
holiday, by the way.
yeah,
Be safe.
same to you all.
See ya.